It's the sixth lesson out of the book, January 10th, 2021. Esau and Jacob. The text is from Genesis 27 through 29. Key verse is Genesis 27, verse 41. And Esau hated Jacob because of the blessings wherewith his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, the days of mourning for my father are at hand. Then will I slay my brother Jacob. Genesis 27:41. Application is the student will accept the overriding providence of God. I think that's how you say it. A first look. Isaac and Rebekah began their life together in faithful obedience to God and to Abraham. However, as times went by, they turned to scheming as the way to get what they wanted. The result was that their family fell to pieces. A good beginning does not guarantee a happy ending. Isaac ignored God's specific instructions recorded in Genesis 19 through 23 before his sons were born. God told Isaac and Rebekah that the blessing was to go to the younger son. This was Jacob. In later years, Isaac sought to give the blessing to Esau. Rebekah resorted to eavesdropping and deception in order to get Isaac to bless Jacob. Jacob went along with these deceptions and actually tricked his father into blessing him, taking advantage of the weakness of an elderly man. It is shameful to treat any elderly, nearly blind man this way, let alone your own father. At first, Esau despised his birthright and sold it for a mess of pottage. Later he wept when he actually lost it. Each member of his family was willing to disregard God's will and his direct teaching in order to get what he wanted. However, God is sovereign, and he can use sinful behavior to accomplish his purposes. Many people today still live just as their family did, and the results will be the same. These verses teach us how God deals with our infirmities and can use our failures to accomplish his will and advance his kingdom. A closer look. Esau hated Jacob. Genesis 23, verses 28 through 30. Verse 40. Chapter 28, 1 through 4. Therefore God gave thee of the dew of heaven, and the fatness of the earth, and plenty of corn and wine. Let people serve thee, and nations bow down to thee. Be Lord over thy brethren, and let thy mother's sons bow down to thee. Cursed be every one that curseth thee, and blessed be he that blesseth thee. And it came to pass, as soon as Isaac had made an end of blessing Jacob, and Jacob was yet scarce gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, that Esau his brother came in from his hunting. And Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherewith his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, the days of mourning for my father are at hand. Then will I slay my brother Jacob. And Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and charged him, and said unto him, thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Paddan Aram, to the house of Bethel, thy mother's father, and take thee a wife from thence of the daughters of Laban, thy mother's brother. And God Almighty bless thee, and make thee fruitful, and multiply thee, that thou mayest be a multitude of people. And give thee the blessing of Abraham to thee, and to thy seed with thee, that thou mayest inherit the land wherein thou art a stranger, which God gave unto Abraham. In this ancient culture, the patriarchal blessing meant more than a few kind words spoken at the end of life. These were equivalent to a last will and testament. In giving this blessing, Isaac was passing along a kind of title deed to the wealth of his family. This blessing included the right to perpetuate the name of the family and also the control of the family fortune. Of course, others in the family would still enjoy benefits from the family wealth, but control, especially the right to pass the family wealth along to another generation, went to the one who received the blessing. Rebekah and Jacob conspired to deceive Isaac into giving the blessing to Jacob instead of Esau. Normally, the blessing went to the eldest son. In this case, God had specifically instructed that the blessing should go to the younger. If each of these people had simply obeyed God, all this intricate, how do you say that word?
Intrigue.
Okay. Would have been unnecessary. As it happened, this incident divided this family permanently. Things were never the same after Jacob stole this blessing. We can only wonder what Rebekah and Jacob thought would happen after the blessing was given to Jacob. Did they expect Isaac to enjoy being deceived? Did they expect Esau to agree with them? Esau had previously sold his birthright, so he was not an innocent victim. When we practice deception instead of faith in God, we weave a horrible web of hatred and broken hearts. This is not a deception of a happy home. The actual blessing was just a few words from the lips of an old man, yet those words were powerful. They conveyed the wealth of a family and the blessing of God unto Jacob. Once they were said, and there was no way to undo them. This teaches us about the power of our words. We are not required to utter either blessings or curse, but once we do, we can never recall our words. Words are powerful, and the things we say have consequences. We should take care when we speak. Esau sought another blessing from Isaac, and when he found that this could not be done, he allowed his hatred to grow to such intensity that he vowed to kill his own brother. He decided to wait until Isaac died and then openly killed Jacob. Perhaps he thought this was a way to get the blessing for himself. Isaac realized the danger of the situation, sent Jacob away to the house of Bethel, the childhood home of Rebekah. This was many miles away, and only Jacob was there. He would be safe from the revenge of Esau. Jacob was also to choose a wife from his own people, just as Abraham had wisely sought a bride for Isaac. Isaac had sought a bride for Jacob, not from Canaan, but from his own people. So you don't have anything to add?
I think the biggest thing there is that the idea is to be equally yoked, don't be unequally yoked. I think for Christians, I know there's a lot of debate on it, but I think a Christian person ought to seek out a Christian person, somebody of like faith. Otherwise, it just brings strife into a relationship. Either that, or both of them just abandon their faith altogether. I mean, I've seen it a lot of times when you mix different religions. People say, "Well, you know, I believe and they believe. We just believe differently." But then when they get married, then there's conflict there. Whose church are we going to go to? What are we going to do? And all of a sudden, they're not going anywhere, and they just forsake God. Period. So, I think at the core of this is, you know, finding someone. I know that they wanted to find someone in their own family, you know, the same family type. But I think for us as Christians, we ought to be thinking that along those lines, that, you know, we ought to want our children to marry Christians. We ought to, you know, not want them to. You know, Isaac was in a different land. We're in a different land, but we ought to want our children to marry Christians. My opinion.
Man, it would also still go along with the fact that Isaac wouldn't want Jacob to marry a Canaanite. He still want to keep the bloodline pure.
Because that's true. And you look at the Canaanites; they were idolaters. They worshiped false gods.
Alrighty, we'll go ahead and continue with God's promise to Jacob. Genesis 28, verses 13 through 15, 19 through 20. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham thy father, and God of Isaac. The land whereon thou liest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed. And thy seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and thou shalt spread abroad to the west, and to the east, and to the north, and to the south. And in thee and in thy seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed. And behold, I am with thee, and will keep thee in all places whither thou goest, and will bring thee again into this land, for I will not leave thee until I have done that which I have spoken to thee of. And he called the name of the place Bethel, but the name of the city was called Luz at the first. And Jacob vowed a vow, saying, If God will be with me, and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and raiment to put on, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then shall the Lord be my God. And this stone which I have set for a pillar shall be my God's house. And of all that thou shalt give me, I shall surely give the tenth unto thee. Isaac, Rebekah, Esau, and Jacob had made a mess of their family. However, God was not through with them. God intervened in order to accomplish his will in the life of Jacob. Jacob journeyed towards Haran and had stopped first at Bethel, about 3 days' journey from his home. That night he had a dream where he saw angels traveling back and forth from earth to heaven. He realized that he was under the divine protection of God. Then he heard God speak to him. God did not rebuke him for his actions. Instead, God reaffirmed to Jacob the covenant he made with Jacob's grandfather Abraham. God cared for Abraham and for Isaac, and now God promised to care for Jacob as well. God promised to make Jacob great, and his descendants would be numberless. He first promised to watch over and protect him wherever he went, and to bring Jacob back to this land once again. This was a reassuring promise for a man who was running for his life, facing an uncertain future. God would appear to Jacob at other times, but this first appearance is significant. Here, Jacob learned the truth of Ephesians 2:10, that God had a plan for his life. And I'm going to go ahead and read that just real quick. Ephesians 2:10, For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus unto God, good work, which God hath before ordained that we should walk in them. Accepting the truth is life-changing. If we believe that God has a plan for us, then life becomes an exciting adventure as the plan unfolds day by day. No event is ordinary. Life can never be meaningless if we are living out the divine plan of God. In response to the wonderful revelation that everything that had happened to him was not random, and that God was guiding him, Jacob made a wonderful declaration for his faith. First, he assured himself of the provisions of God in matters small and great. God will provide small things like food and clothing, and God will also be in great matters as resolving family conflict for Jacob and bringing Jacob safely back to his home. Then Jacob declared that he was accepting God as his leader and provider. The statement, "Then shall the Lord be my God," Genesis 28:21, is filled with meaning. Usually the term Lord refers to the coming God, the Messiah. Jacob was looking forward to Jesus in the statement. Then Jacob promised that he would give back to God from what God gave him. At this time, Jacob did not have much, but he realized that God would increase his wealth, and he promised to return a portion of that increase back to God. In all matters, our giving is an expression of our love. How much are we willing to give is directly related to how much we love. And that is mentioned in Matthew 6:21, which I'm going to go ahead and read also. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. You want to add anything real quick? Alrighty. A deceiver is deceived. Genesis 29, verses 25 through 30. And it came to pass that in the morning, behold, it was How do you say that name? Leah. Thank you. I was trying to figure that out earlier. I couldn't figure it out still. And he said to Laban, that is this thou hast done unto me. Did not I serve with thee for Rachel? Wherefore hast thou beguiled me? Beguiled. Thank you. And Laban said, it must not be so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week, and he will give thee this also for the service which thou shalt serve with me yet 7 other years. And Jacob did so, and fulfilled her week, and he gave him Rachel, his daughter, to wife also. And Laban gave to Rachel his daughter, Bilhah, his handmaid, to be her maid. And he went in also unto Rachel, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet 7 other years. Jacob journeyed on to the home of Laban, his uncle, and fell in love with Laban's daughter Rachel. He made an agreement with his uncle to work 7 years in order to marry Rachel. After the wedding night, he discovered that he had been tricked and that he had married Leah, the older sister of Rachel. The trickster had been tricked. The man who deceived his father had been deceived. Laban's explanation must have been a powerful reminder of his own deception of Isaac. The older sister had been substituted for the younger, just as the younger son had taken the blessing that would normally go to his older brother. Jacob still wanted to marry Rachel, and so he ignored the pattern taught by his grandfather and father. A week later, he married Rachel and had to work another 7 years for her. From the beginning, God had established the pattern for a home that was one man in a monogamous relationship with one woman for life. People have often ignored this pattern, but they do so to their own hurt. It is interesting to note that it was Leah who first bore Jacob children. Her firstborn son was Reuben, and she went on to become the mother of 4 other sons. Rachel was childless for a time and would eventually bear 2 sons, Joseph and Benjamin. Interestingly, it would be Leah, the first wife of Jacob, who would be the mother of Levi and Judah. Jacob would also father 2 children by Bilhah, the handmaiden of Rachel, and 2 children by Zilpah, the handmaiden of Leah. Anything to add before we go to a final word?
I think if you just look at the example, there's always going to be jealousy, and there's a reason God said one man, one woman for a lifetime, because it just brings jealousy and hurt into the family. And you can see it in the examples all down through the Bible when man got away from what God's plan was. There's always jealousy and hurt and issues arising.
I apologize. Names I struggle with, so I usually write off to the side of how to pronounce them, and that ain't helping today. So, but I'll go ahead and go on to a final word. Sin casts long shadows that reach across generations and affect the lives of many innocent people. The actions of Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, and Esau touched many lives and brought a great deal of trouble to many people. Jacob was blessed by God and would later have his name changed to Israel, but he scarcely had a happy home. His wives were in an almost constant struggle, and his sons behaved more like enemies than brothers. God blessed Jacob, but at the same time, Jacob suffered for the sins he committed. The lesson for us is that when we sin, we do not forfeit from the leadership of God. God can use sinners to accomplish his purpose. His divine plan for us, for our lives, takes our sin into an account. However, the great lesson remains. When we sin after we have received knowledge of the truth, the sin must be dealt with. We will reap what we sow, and there will never be a crop failure. These men and women were real people who made real choices. They were not forced to deceive each other, but once they did, the result of their actions was inevitable. Likewise, we do not have to sin. In all matters, great or small, we can do what is right and trust God to lead us and to bless us. If we choose to ignore God and sin anyways, we can expect to reap the consequences of the actions we have committed. Do not be deceived. God will not be mocked by our conduct. If we sow to the flesh, we will reap destruction. If we sow to the Spirit, we will reap everlasting life.
Back to the marriage between having more than one wife. I think it's in the commentary. Did you read the commentary? The guy likened it to, he said, even though in America polygamy is against the law, he said, really, he sees divorce and remarriage is just a workaround polygamy, in his opinion. Yeah, I mean, he said it's not stopping anything, and these people, just remarry and have children with another.
You marry for life.
Right.
Piece of paper may not necessarily change that.
Right.
Well, you take a vow, and it says, "Till death do you part,"
Right.
and it's a vow. It's something that doesn't just erase when you say that you're done.
Well,
you
a
vow
lot
to that.
of people get married now and look at divorce as an option.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not supposed to be looked that way. Yet they still
Well,
look at it
especially
like
When
that.
I was in high school, there was some friends of mine. When they graduated, I was talking to the girl, and I said, "So what are y'all going to do?" I knew they were dating, and she said, "Well, we're going to get married. If it don't work out, we'll just get divorced."
Yeah.
You think they made it?
Nope.
They didn't. It didn't take very long. I don't know if they made it a couple of years.
That's how most people think.
I mean,
these
that's
days.
the way, there's no commitment in their mind even before they start.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a long time ago, Alan.
Feels back when you were in school. It was a real long time ago.
That was 34 years ago.
That was when Stonewall Jackson was still a high school.
Yeah.
That's
But
lame.
Stonewall Jackson was still Stonewall Jackson.
Yeah, now
Yeah.
it's name is Stonewall Jackson.
My mom told me before I got married that divorce should not ever come out of my lips. She said no matter how many arguments or fights you get in, no matter how heated it gets, you never use the word divorce because you open up a gate of evil.
Mm.
That's something like Tracy mentioned there. A lot of people our age, they just look at it as an excuse. And there's a lot of people that we went to school with that's gotten married and already divorced.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I'm only 25. It's not been that long ago yet.
In our society, it's an easy out.
It is.
It's too easy to get a divorce
Mhm.
nowadays.
All right. Anything else to add? If not, we got a little bit of time before we have services again, so we'll hang out and have fellowship.
Have a water.